back to the present. Last 6 weeks, we spent in Israel, connecting to Israel's biblical past, connecting to Israel's prophetic future, and talking about what's going on in the present in Israel. But now we're back in LA, back to this present here. And from here, I want to share some of the things that impacted me while we were there, some of the things that we kind of connected to. But let's start off with the beginning, because as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, why did we go back to Israel? What's the reason? And why are we going back to Israel in September? And more than anything, this is what I think God wanted me to share with you. And this is from Romans. This is chapter 15, and I'm going to go from verse 25. And this is Paul, which I've been coming a little bit closer to, because Paul actually was a witness and an apostle and a prophet to the Gentiles. And here's what Paul says. But now I'm going to Jerusalem to minister to the saints. And I'm going to use the word believers, and I'm going to use the word Christians. The word saints sounds weird for Israelis, but for it pleased those from Macedonia and Achaia, and I'm going to say from the U.S., to make a certain contribution for the poor among the saints who are in Jerusalem. It pleased them indeed. They are in their debt. For if the Gentiles have been partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister to them in material things. What Paul is saying very clear, I'm going back to Jerusalem with support for the believers in Jerusalem, with support for the saints in Jerusalem, because if the Gentiles want to be a part of the story of Israel, and they are a part, Jesus came from the Jewish people, then they owe the Jewish people their support. And that, I think, is something that sits very, very strongly on what I'm doing and what we're going to be doing and what Gihon Springs, which is the ministry that I'm part of, has been doing lately. But let's go back to the whole event in Israel. And more than anything, we land in Israel, and again, I grew up in Israel, and nothing has really changed. I mean, you get off the plane, you walk through the airport. I was surprised how crowded the airport is. And I drove up streets that I know, and up highways, and into the neighborhood, and meet the family. Nothing has really changed on the spirit, on the physical aspect. But I think we felt a deep change in both the emotional environment in Israel and the spiritual environment in Israel. And I'm going to say this like this. The state of Israel, the Jewish people, the Israelis are going through PTSD right now. Serious PTSD. And I need the Americans who support Israel to understand what it means for us that everybody that we know has people fighting in Gaza. Everybody that we know has lost people. Everybody. I mean, ask me a question about anybody that I know. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows a hostage. I mean, this is very up close and very personal for us, as opposed to an event that takes place in Afghanistan or somewhere else in the Middle East when you send your army out. And that is something that you need to understand about us. It's very personal. Now, the day is the same, but you got to be careful where you go. You can't go up to the far north because it's dangerous up there, because the Hezbollah is firing rockets up there. You can't go to the far south because it's dangerous down there, because all of that is happening. And the fighting is still going on. And every day we hear about another soldier and another 2 soldiers that are hurt. My nephew was in Gaza. So every time I get a phone call, every time you hear something on the group family, the family chat, okay, you freak out, because what's going on with Sean? We have gone through a near-death experience, and it's shaking up our security in our army. It's shaking up our security in our political system. It's shaking up our security in ourself. And this is something that I think this is really important to understand, because in this environment, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, what Israel needs more than anything is Jesus. And that's what I want to connect to here. Another thing is that we've got an amazing past. And most Israelis are secular, so you're not into the prophetic, into the future. And what's happened is, what happened on the 7th of October, and it took me a while to realize, is that people are afraid of talking about the future. We don't know what's going to happen. Is there going to be a war in the north? Is it going to end in the south? And the future is really, really up for grabs. And think about somebody who is not a believer, who doesn't have this to help them deal with what's going to happen in the future. It creates a season, or a feeling of insecurity. And I want to share that with you more than anything. Israelis feel really, really insecure right now. And to add on to that, a feeling of betrayal that it took, again, a while for me to understand. But Israelis feel betrayed by the world around them. They feel betrayed by the Arabs. We thought we were getting closer. We thought we had a peace movement. We thought we were reaching an agreement. We thought we could talk to the Hamas even. And we feel betrayed by these people who work among us, live among us, and we're deeply betrayed by the fact that we were thinking about some kind of agreement or appeasement of the Muslim Arabs that live among us, and they totally stabbed us in the back, in the front, and everything in between. And think about how that makes you feel when the people that you've worked with and people you've talked to all of a sudden turn out to be the kind of people that the Hamas has turned out to be. We feel betrayed by the world. And again, we've all studied the Holocaust, we've all studied the pogroms, we've all studied the Inquisition, we've all studied these terrible events for Jewish people, and we thought, no, it's not going to happen again. I mean, the world has seen our friends in Europe, our Christian friends in the world, all over the world, we have their support. I mean, it's not crickets. And in many cases, not only crickets, downright anti-Semitism that has raised its head all over the world. Israelis feel betrayed by the world again. We've been here, we know this deep sense of betrayal. And this is something that I need Americans to understand, because this is going to play a role in what's going to happen in the future. Israel is very close. Families are very knit, and we've become closer. Everything is smaller in Israel. I mean, you go 5 minutes to here, 10 minutes to there. Family events happen a lot more in Israel. Families tend to stay closer together. Not everybody, but in the States, you know, the kids grow up, go to college, and they go. Here, I mean, I saw my cousins, my brothers, my nephews. I see them on a regular basis. So it's much more personal for everybody. And then we come, while we were there, to Yom HaZikaron, which is our Memorial Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, which is our Independence Day. And in Israel, they're stuck together. And the Memorial Day was deeply mind-boggling. I mean, and I walked outside in front of my mom's house, in the garden where we walk the dogs. And I've known this, but in the corner of the garden is a little memorial for somebody who was killed in one of the wars. And when the siren went off, I turned around and I saw this young soldier who had fallen in one of the former wars, and his family all standing around this memorial in the middle of suburban Israel, remembering what we had lost. We have all lost people. This is a part of the dynamic. And this is what happened on this Memorial Day. And usually Independence Day is like, okay, the classic Jewish event. They tried to kill us. They didn't kill us. Let's celebrate. I mean, that's what Jewish celebrations are. We couldn't get to the celebration this time. The Day of Independence was a sad day of independence this time. I'm saying we are deeply in this. And I need you to understand that all of the Israelis are worried about what's going to happen in the future. All of the Israelis are worried about what our relationship is going to be with the Arabs. All the Israelis are worried about what our relationship is going to be in the greater Middle East. And all of the Israelis are worried about what our relationship is going to be with the rest of the world. And that's the situation in Israel right now. I need you to understand that, because there's a lot of things that we need to talk about, what you can do in this kind of situation. A couple of words about the situation. The fighting in Gaza, in Rafah, is still going on. Every day we lose another soldier, another 2 soldiers. But it's close to being over. And the world is now dealing with what's going to happen on the day after. We've rescued 4 of the hostages, but we have a feeling that the rest of the hostages are dead. And if not, when this all comes down to something close, it's going to fall apart, and they will be executed by the enemy. We've tried to reach a hostage agreement, and that would include a ceasefire. But the Hamas is not really worried, really interested in an agreement, because it's got so much support from so many weird people all over the world that they believe that if they can just hang out long enough, they will survive this. The United States is, for instance, is expressing concern about the humanitarian issue, which there really isn't, but it looks good on tape. And your president, in his need to be reelected, is how do you say, kowtowing to a different dynamic. Though we have had the support of the United States, that support is starting to fall, and there's actually talk about not allowing or not supplying Israel with some of the armaments that we're going to need to deal with this, and allowing the world, who is coming up on Israel on all kinds of international criminal court trials and things like that, allowing the world to take a piece or take a bite out of Israel on a regular basis. So that's the situation, and the dynamic with the United States and the Israeli government is very, very complex right now. The Israeli government, on the other side, is fragmented and disoriented, and we have a very serious problem with the coalition that Benjamin Netanyahu had with the right wing wasn't experienced enough to run the war, so he created a war cabinet for the period of the war, but for all kinds of political reasons, that has fallen apart, and Israel's political situation is also totally up in the air, and we're trying to figure out what's going on, and add on to that the Hezbollah in the north is just waiting for an excuse to start an all-out war. The United States of America is trying to reach a diplomatic agreement with Lebanon and the Hezbollah in the north in order for this not to turn into a regional war, but it might just happen. Now, Iran doesn't want a regional war yet. Israel doesn't want a regional war yet. But as of now, and we might actually end up stepping into that in the situation that we are talking about now. And I want to stress something very, very important. I grew up in Israel talking about the hills and the past and the Bible. I grew up in a Christian environment talking about the future and prophecy. But Israel as a nation is very, very unsure about its future. And if there's anything I want to convey to you, is this insecurity that Israel feels right now. And to stress something that I think is really important, because a lot of us know that we reach out to God, we reach out to Jesus, we reach out when we are sinking. And Israel is at a point where it's sinking right now. And what Israel needs more than anything is Jesus to reach in and to pull us out of the waves. Now, that's a very complex saying right now. But Israel needs Jesus now more than ever before. And I'm going to say, coming back from 6 weeks in Israel, Israel is more open to Christian love than they ever have been in the past, because of all these things that we're talking about, which is why now is the time to extend the love of the Prince of Peace himself to the Jewish people. And just, I think I've shared this before, but I want to kind of replace. We met a young group of Israelis on the Hill during a tour that we were there with the group that was there. And when they realized that we're a Christian group, they started asking, why are Christians coming to Israel in this time of war? And when we explained that this Christian group came to show their support for Israel because of the love of Jesus, and they wanted to extend Jesus to these people, some of them literally started crying. And we had a chance to evangelize, to spread the gospel, to speak about Jesus, to say the word Jesus to about 25, 30 young Israelis in a way that I've never had before. They were open, they were asking, they were receiving. And I don't know if anybody became a believer though, but I will say this, that seed was planted right there, and the openness is completely different. And this is what I want to share with you. If there's anything I want brought back with me, is Israel is suffering. Israel is unsure of itself. Israel doesn't know what its future is. And you and I both know what the future for Israel is. It's time to bring that future to Israel as much as we can and however we can. And that is, I think, what was on my heart. Because, like Paul said, for if the Gentiles have been partakers of the spiritual things, they have a duty also to minister to Israel. That's what we need to do. So that's the Balagan connection for today. I have a link to Gijón Springs down here, which is the ministry that we're connected in doing that. Me and Chrissy will be going back in September and reconnecting to Israel. We've got another tour. We're planning a couple of different events in support of Israel. So if you want to be, like Paul said, ministers to Gentile ministers to Israel, connect to Gijón Springs down there. If you want to contribute to the Balagan connection and what we're doing, we're going to be putting up a little bit more content now. Connect to the Balagan connection through the Gijón Springs if you want to donate or support this. And what I'm trying to say is, pray that we will be able to bring more and more of Jesus to the people of Israel in this time of trial. This is what I think is more important than anything, and I wanted to share this with you today. So this is DaviD TaL. This is the Balagan Connection. Hope to see you here soon.